Hi everyone, I'm Chrissy Regan, and this is the Everyday Wellness Podcast with Chrissy. And I'm joyful and happy and delighted today to welcome my friend and dual marathon runner, Tristan Nelliman-Adams. Hi, Tristan.
Hey, Christy, how are you? And good day to everyone out there who's listening on this podcast. Definitely get on board and support Christy and all her stuff that she's doing.
Oh, that's too kind. Thank you very much. So we've spent a lot of time together, run, sweating, and hopefully inspiring other people this year. But you're not long back from running the oldest marathon in the world in Athens, which gives me goosebumps when I think about it. So tell me how a boy from the Torres Strait Islands finds his way to Athens.
Yeah, I definitely can. So, bit of a long one. So, probably in the last few weeks, I just came back from, like you said, Athens over in Greece, running the authentic original marathon. So, marathon is 42 kilometers, quite a long way. It's something that not a lot of people can do. And once people do it, it definitely changes their life forever. So, backtrack a little bit in 2021. So last year, I applied for a program called the Indigenous Marathon Project, which is here on my shirt, if you can see.
Mhm.
So the Indigenous Marathon Project is a part of the Indigenous Marathon Foundation as a whole. And that's run by and founded by a famous Australian runner called Rob De Castella. So Rob De Castella is proper famous, back in the 80s and uh, early 90s. He's ran marathons all over the world. He's won Boston Marathon, went really well in New York. Completed at Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games, all the things. He's done it all in terms of running in the sport of marathons. So in 2010, he founded the foundation, the Indigenous Marathon Foundation, where he sought after four young Aboriginal men to train them up from zero to running a marathon in 6 months. It's a huge task. People that run know how hard that is, and people that are quite good runners will tell you that's absolutely crazy doing that. So he built up the foundation, and in the span of 6 months, trained these four young men to basically nothing to be able to run a marathon. And what they did was they went over to New York City in America, and they took on the New York City Marathon. At the time, he didn't really know how they would all go. Their preparations were hindered. He didn't really know how it turned out. But what he was trying to do was to try and see if Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young men and women could be on par athleticism wise with some of the great African runners, so the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, and how they dominate the sport of running. He wanted to see if Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people could do exactly the same. So what he found, though, was, we're really good at running, and yeah, we can do some really incredible things, but it became more about running. It came about inspiring their communities. It came about inspiring their families. It came about inspiring the whole of Australia. So those four young men, they crossed the finish line in America, and they became the first four graduates of the Indigenous Marathon Project. That was in 2010. That went on for another 12 years, including this year. So I was a part of the squad last year, and I went through exactly the same journey. So, I'm notoriously not a runner. I'll tell people I hate running because I do. But what I did was I'm traditionally a rugby league player, and I stepped out of my comfort zone, applied for the marathon project, was successful in getting it, and last year went on the most roller coaster journey of my life, which concluded in running a marathon last year. But due to COVID, COVID factors from around the world. Usually they go over to New York City. So it's been a thing where since 2010 all the way through, they've gone to New York City to run the marathon. Last year, we were very blessed actually to be able to run it in Alice Springs at night time. So it was more special for us and more special for us as Indigenous people. Jen fast forwards onto this year where they asked us, because we never got to go to New York, do you want to go over to Greece and represent Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the world stage and get you a chance to run an international marathon and do that by tackling the authentic original marathon in Athens? And I said, sign me up. So that's how it all came about. And that's how, just over 3-4 weeks ago, recently, I took part and I started the finish line. I took place and was on the starting line in an actual little town called Marathon and ran to Athens. And it was a crazy, crazy experience. Been a crazy 24 months. So very blessed.
That sounds, I've got goosebumps listening. And I read your post about the bus ride to the start line. You said it was one of the most beautiful sunrises you've ever seen.
Yeah, it was incredible. I've never been overseas before, so the whole international travel journey was just something else. I'm from the Torres Straits, a little island called Thursday Island is the capital, but also I spent a lot of time in a little island called Murray Island, which is far east, and that's famous, notorious for the indigenous advocate Kweki Mabo, who fought for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander land rights. So, I'm proud to be able to come from such a strong generation of people. So, I've never ever been overseas, and as a kid growing up, and still now as an adult, I thought overseas was something you see in movies. Going to places like overseas and exploring the world was just not something that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people do, which is sad, but it's kind of the reality of the world we live in. So you know, traveling overseas and going on big airplanes and getting my passport and going to duty free at the airport and seeing people that they're human beings just like us, but they can't speak English, and it was just all such a cultural eye opener for me. And Greece was a beautiful country, and yeah, heading out in the bus. Out to the starting line. I remember it was a very, very quiet bus ride. Everyone was a bit nervous. But yeah, as we headed out, the beautiful Greek coastline and the beautiful sunrise as the sun was coming up was something I'll never forget. And I just was going for my phone the other day and I was grateful. I got like a little 4-second video of it, but it's still pretty cool. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. Who knew that what something so beautiful that wasn't beautiful that light ahead.
Well, exactly. But let's rewind for a second because are you telling me I don't need my passport to go to Murray Island?
No, you don't. So definitely get for a trip up there. Definitely go see the Torres Strait, Cape York. There's some beautiful country up there, both on the Cape York and the mainland, especially up on the islands. It's like people from Australia, if they've never been up there, it's some place that you've never seen before. Crystal blue waters, magnificent fishing, beautiful people, beautiful culture up there. So definitely head up to Murray Island.
I had the joy to meet some more Torres Strait Islanders in Mackay in June when we did the Indigenous Marathon National Championships. And tell me about the little dance that everyone did for us on the last night, which was just phenomenal.
Yeah, so like you said, we went to the Raw Championships, and it was pretty cool because a lot of communities from all over Australia brought their own Raw groups, and as a part of that, they had to create and design their own message stick. Would be seen as a baton relay, so it was beautiful to see all the different cultures, far north up from Elco Island, all the way down south to Adelaide, up through Cape York, everywhere. All brought some magnificent teams across, and of course, a dead little team from Torres Strait and the Thursday Island Deadly Runners. So, I was really blessed because growing up there, I hadn't seen, Bala Nukas and Bala Abs, who's a graduate as well. So he's a big part of why I joined the Indigenous Marathon Project. Bala Harold, but also see my two uncles, Uncle Kiri and Uncle Michael Zitha. So it was really good to reconnect with them. But it was really beautiful that no matter how far you are, no matter how far away you go from the Torres Strait, we just always have our heart on our sleeve and we always are very proud of our culture. So, I was very blessed that they were able to perform a traditional dance called Kumiranga. And that's just kind of like a dance, which is it's just like a normal dance that everyone does throughout the Torres Strait, which symbolizes coming together. So it was pretty cool that no matter how far away you go from your home, they were still very proud of their culture. They were still very blessed to show with the rest of Australia. Much like when I went to Greece, I still wore little things that represented my Torres Strait culture, even though I was a long way from.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'm going to ask you a few other questions around that later, but tell me a bit about what happens in Athens because it wasn't your ideal marathon run, was it?
No, and look, running a marathon is hard, full stop. But when things don't go right, it definitely makes it for a bit more challenging. So, like I said, On the way out, everything was really amazing. I've never experienced such international marathons before, even big events. The closest we've come to it was the Gold Coast Marathon, where yourself ran the marathon early in June, and I took part in it. So just getting off the bus and seeing all the thousands of people there. It was about, geez, hundreds of buses that pulled up, about 17,000 people. Not many people spoke English, so we're just following with the crowd, and they're trying to tell us things, and we have no idea. So we're just walking and walking for ages. We finally get to a spot, and of course, everyone needed to go to the toilet. So we had about 45 minutes of people just trying to find toilet using portaloos and running out of toilet paper, and of course, just little things that happen before a race. So um, the vibes and the atmosphere was something so extremely special and extremely rare, but something I've never experienced before. And I hope to experience if I go do more international marathons around the world. So we warmed up as a crew. There was about 10 of us. There was about 9 of us actually that were graduates last year or the year before, and we were given that opportunity to go overseas to earn our international marathon. There were 2 squad members from this year's squad that, for various reasons, couldn't go to New York, so they joined us in Athens, which I thought was pretty special. That we got to witness them finish their journey, and I know how powerful that is. When we finished it in Alice Springs last year, how amazing it was to be there for them. And of course, we had the great man, Damien Tuck, who's the Iron Peak head coach. So we're lucky that he was our coach. We have such a special bond with him. He's a good man, and he ran as well, so that was pretty cool. So, all of that happened. We all ran as a crew. We warmed up, and everything was good. For the first 5 kilometers, we definitely felt like we were running a marathon. The vibes were high, woohoo, and we were going, and we had Australia written on the back of our singlets, so everyone would run past and like, "Go Australia," or "Go Aussies," and then you had some randoms saying, "Oh, Wallabies suck," or "Socceroos are going to lose in the World Cup." So, the vibes were just insane. We actually saw, I'm now thinking of it, another lady. She was from Sydney and she had an Aboriginal flag on. I don't know who she was or where she came from, but I remember talking to her, and that's the last I saw her at the starting line because, it was a long way to the end. So, shout out to whoever you are. That's just the So, she was, as the race started going, the first 5 kilometers were pretty cool. We actually got to cross paths once with each other. So we had to go to a fountain, which was Athena's fountain, on the way to a marathon, which is a really, really big fountain that had the statue of Athena in it. And we thought that was pretty cool. You go around the fountain, which is a big roundabout, which is a couple of 100 meters. So it's really cool. But when you come back, that's the only time we ever cross paths with the rest of our little crew. So it's funny that I high-fived some of the people. We're only about maybe 20 minutes in, I high-fived with them. And then I remember talking to one of the other brothers, and I was like, all right, we're not going to see them to the end for another 6 hours. So we were just, all the vibes were really fun and really high. It was a bit of a pack at the back of us. There was about 4 of us, all kind of just trotting along, really easing into it and feeling good. I started to feel really good with myself, and I've been training really hard, so I wanted to give it a bit of a crack. So I left that pack and I kind of went ahead. So from 5 kilometers through to 10 kilometers, just enjoying it, enjoying. I remember I'm picturing in my head that I was running on the right. There was beautiful mountainous, Greek scenery. We'd go past some little villages, and there was old ladies in Greek togas, and they were doing the traditional Greek dancing, and that was really cool. All the little kids along the both parts of the street were handing out olive branches, and you grab one in the back of my headband, and I ran for that for ages. I think it fell out along the way because I didn't have it at the end, poor thing. So it was all really, really fun. That first 10 kilometers was just exactly what I thought the whole thing would have been like. Yeah. Unfortunately, about 10 kilometers in, I'm running. Greek roads are probably not the best, and I hit a bit of a divot. And when I hit the divot, I remember my left foot kind of went in, and I just remember having an instant sharp pain running all the way up my foot, both on the bottom and the top of my foot. I've got a history of plantar fasciitis, which is a classic runner's injury. So I thought, oh man, this is very early for my plan to be playing up. So it doesn't matter. I'll just trot along. I then started to notice a pain on the top of my foot, which is something I've never felt before and was a bit new. So about 10 and a half kilometers, 11 kilometers in, I just started to hurt that much, but I couldn't really run and I couldn't really walk. So I couldn't put any weight on it. So I remember there was a railing on my right and I just kind of held onto the railing and hopped on one foot for a long time. Morgan, Clinton, and Bonnie, who were with me at the back of the pack, they shortly overtook me, and they thought like they were stressing too because like Tris, you were cruising. What's wrong? And I was like, I don't know, just don't worry about me. Run your race, and I'll see you at the finish line. I'll see you up ahead once I come good. So they took off. All three of them went past me. At that stage, it was quite hot too, so I think I was just kind of feeling a bit cooked. So I was hot, my foot was sore, and I was limping. So from 10 kilometers till about 25. So for 15 kilometers, I hopped on one foot and walked as much as I could without being sore. And I hopped again and walked, and I was flying the first 10 kilometers, so it was a bit disappointing, and I started to feel a bit down, thinking, why am I going so slow and times and all that? So that kind of went into my head, and that's what was a bit affecting me. At the 25-kilometer mark, or actually before that, from 10 all the way through to 25, there were some medical guys on like the edge of the street. But they looked a bit dodgy. They had board shorts on, and one bloke was puffing durries, and they were like based in little bus stops, so they didn't really look exactly like they would give some good advice. So I kept walking, running, hopping, whatever I could do just to get going. But at the 25-kilometer mark, I saw a tent, and I hadn't seen a tent all course. There was some nice physio tents, like tables set up. So I saw these blokes. I'm like, oh, choice, there must be physios from the university or something that can help me out. I went over to them. There again, communication was hard. So I told them like my foot was sore and I don't know what's going on. Do you have any painkillers? I asked them painkillers, and they're like, "Oh, we'll have a look." They told me to take my shoe off. I was so hesitant taking my shoe off. That's like a no-no you can do when running long distances. I took off my shoe, and then instantly my foot just swelled up to like a balloon. It was like massive purple, gross colors. They were trying to like do assessments and stuff, but it was just hurting too much. So they're like, "Oh, exactly where the physio was, exactly across the road was an ambulance." So like, we'll walk over to the ambulance. I hop over to the ambulance. The ambulance is they're probably a bit more better. They're talking English and they're letting me know what's going on. They said, "Oh, I think you've got stress fractures on the top of your foot, and also your plantar fasciitis playing up on the bottom of the foot. So it's just you can't really do much." And I said, "Oh, can I have some painkillers?" And I'll keep going. They're like, "Keep going, like you're done, mate. Like you're not going to be able to finish it. Let's do 17 kilometers. That's a long way, and you're no capable way of walking or running. Like we had to help you to get from one side of the road to the other. How are you going to go for another 17 kilometers?" So they gave me some painkillers, and I'm sitting in the back of the paramedics, and I'm like, "Oh man, I didn't come all the way to Greece to not finish." And I'm starting to feel a bit down, crying, like as runners do when you run a marathon. You get so emotional over little things. You could have the breeze blowing in you, and the breeze stops and you're crying. It's why. So it's just that's how I was feeling over. So from the 10-kilometer to the 25-kilometer, I was already an emotional wreck and playing in my own head and fighting demons just to get that far. When they told me I was done, I just accepted defeat. They started me asking me questions. Where you staying? Where's your emergency contact? Who can we contact? All these things like. So then in my head, it started to become a bit real about, I probably won't finish this, probably won't get the chance to finish it. So I started to get all those things, and I had my phone on me, so I was trying to find people's numbers and work out where we're staying. And they gave me some painkillers. Here you go, mate. Take this in case it'll take the pain down, and we'll, when you get back, we'll take you to the hospital, all that. As they gave me the painkillers, they left it on the bench. They had my shoe next to the bench because they told me not to put my shoe back on. And I was adamant I wanted to keep going, but they said, "No, mate, don't. You're done. Like, don't run." That's what they kept saying. Don't run. And I heard, commotion in Greek language, and then all of a sudden they grabbed their trauma kit and they ran out, and there was a little man that was running past, and he passed out. Poor fella, so he just passed out on the ground. So he obviously he was hurting, so just exhausted his body. I saw this as an opportunity. Once he was passed out, I've taken a bottle of water. They said take 4 painkillers. 4 should be enough. I think I popped about 10 or 11. And I was like looking. I put my shoe back on. Didn't even tie my shoelace because I knew that the tightness would have hurted it. So I just tucked the shoelace on the side, popped about 10, 11, whatever their Panadol is or whatever their painkiller thing was. And I remember saying, well, you're either going to overdose and die or you're going to finish this marathon. So, yeah, I popped out of it and I just started walking and then walking quite fast in case they tried to get me. And then once it started to kick in, I could run again, which was good. So then I started to run, walk for the last 17 kilometers. I didn't actually put this on my Facebook post, Chrissy, but I remember my Garmin died. So technically I never ran a marathon, if it means anything on Strava. So
hey, dude, no. Hold up those 2 medals. You've run 2 marathons, you got 2 medals. Forget about the Garmin, okay? Forget about the Garmin.
Yeah. So I think the big thing that when that died, it played in my head because I didn't know how far I was, and all the measurements were in Greek, so I couldn't tell what numbers where I were. So I was just running. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how far I was. Didn't know what time it was, because if I could tell what time it was, I could gauge how long I've been going for. But I was just cruising. Yeah. And then I remember I was having conversations with people in my head that weren't even there. So I'm talking to someone, they answer me back, and then I kind of snap back in reality. I was like, did we just have a conversation? I remember I was like hallucinating. I was seeing little dinosaurs run past. There was a little.
Just taken 10 Greek narcotics, basically.
There was a lot of things going on, and then I started to realize that the only marker I ever saw or ever could understand, or I must have heard someone say, was 35. So I'm like, 35 Ks. I've only got 7 to go. So then I started to feel really good. I'm cruising. I'm having a good time. I started to enjoy it as much as you can enjoy it. I was still in so much pain, still fighting so many demons, still mentally and physically hurting. But then I started to come towards Athens, so they had like DJ booths set up and more crowd and party atmosphere, and it was fun and enjoyable. And I started to enjoy that, and I had a little dance with a little girl. She's probably 6 on the side of the room. We're about to do this. And as I going through Athens, the streets are very windy. Like you take a sharp left and you run for 100 meters, take a sharp right. We keep doing that for a long time. I remember looking up ahead and I saw a yellow singlet take a right, and I'm thinking, that could be one of us. Surely there's no more IMP mob out here. Like everyone's done. So that's when I really probably emptied my bucket, which is a term used in IMF, just to give it as much as you got. So I probably gave it everything I had just to catch up and see if I saw something or if it's just someone with a yellow singlet. And as I got ahead, I realized that it was one of my best mates in the world. They went through the IMP squad with me. One was Clinton and one was Bonnie. And then I've just sprinted as hard as I could to them, and then I've just started crying. And I remember saying, "Oh my guys, you have no idea. You have no idea what I just went through." And they just laughing. They're like, "Where have you been?" They didn't even care. They're like, "Oh, we thought you were finished." So then they were just having a good old time. Like I was a long way behind them, so I really had to hustle to get up towards them, and they were just cruising, having a good old time.
So you literally escaped from the back of an ambulance with your shoe to finish your marathon.
Exactly. And
does it feel worth it now? At the time, you obviously saying, "Am I crazy?" But are you glad you did it?
Yeah. And if you ask me if I'll do it again, yeah, I probably would. I just feel like to travel all the way over to the other side of the world, there was nothing that was going to stop me. And 17,000 people took the starting line of that marathon, and only 12,000 finished. So 5,000 people just dropped out. Or 5,000.
It's a huge number to do a marathon. Like obviously I haven't 7,000 in Melbourne felt like a lot, because we started up the front with the elite runners, and the thought of 7,000 people behind me was enough to make me run my butt off for 10Ks, because I didn't want to get steamrolled by another 7,000 people.
And because we were with IMF, we were really blessed where we were in wave 2. There was 14 waves.
Wow.
So we were in wave two. The pros went and they went off, and then there was all us, as you can see, the second pros.
Yeah.
So we all joined them. So I remember we were like people that were cruising because you could tell by the colors. We would see like constant yellow bibs or blue bibs or gold bibs, and all of a sudden we'd see like a purple bib, and we're like, "What wave's that?" And we're like, "Oh, that's wave nine." So the people in wave nine have caught up to us; they're beating us. But it's just so surreal. And then I ended up finishing the race with those two. We were all hurting, and then I felt like I could have kept going because there was 3 kilometers to go, and I was running really good, and I was running really freely, and I was probably just trying to run as fast as I could and finish it off. And then but then I ran ahead of them for about 100 meters, and I looked back and they were hurting, and I was hurting too, but I wasn't hurting as much as they were. So I came back to them. I said, you know what, let's just finish it hand in hand with this across the line.
Yeah.
So
Good on
we
you.
ran through the city for the last few Ks. Probably some of the most enjoyable experience I've ever had in my life running with those two. They're literally my best mates. I talk to them every single day. I ring them or call them or text them without a doubt. So to be able to finish the marathon with them hand in hand, I remember we were coming down a hill, and then we just heard a roar of noise. I'm thinking that, like, what is that? But that was the crowd. Like the whole Olympic Stadium was packed, and there was just so many people there. And as soon as we were on that home stretch, it was blue carpet all the way through, similar to Gold Coast. And Bonnie and Clint were ecstatic. They were screaming and like, yeah, we did it. I was a bit dead, so I wasn't as much. And if you see any of the photos, I'm very dead in the photos. But I remember just seeing up in the distance, a long way away, just the rest of the IMP crowd were there and they were cheering us, but you just saw the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands flag. Like, so it was just so proud. I remember getting so emotional just at the sight of that. And when we crossed the finish line hand in hand, which is what we planned to do, there's amazing photos of that, some amazing videos. And then, we were met by our coach who ran the marathon as well. Then he was the one that finished first. Then he stuck back and he waited for everyone else to cross the finish line so we could have a moment with them. Like, he's a crazy man. And then he, was walking around the city that night too, trying to find us all dinner. Like, he's a good follower, but it was just the most amazing experience. It was hard, yes. Was it physically and mentally and, spiritually the toughest thing I've ever done? Yes. But would I do another one? Absolutely. It was so fun.
It was beautiful. And your photo from Santorini was special. I was in Santorini about 12 years ago, so I enjoyed seeing your picture too.
Yeah. So it was very definitely. So then after Athens, the very next day, we went to Santorini for a bit of a holiday. So we were some very sore and sorry bodies getting around Santorini that day.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not an easy place to walk around either.
No, it's not. So we had a bit of a villa, which is about maybe where the car park dropped us. It's probably about 400 or 500 meters, but that 400 or 500 meters seemed like a very long way carting our luggage to our villa. But it was all worth it, and it was just an amazing experience.
And so I think that obviously I've got to know you a bit over the last few years, but you mentioned about the fact that you had a big desire to run a marathon. So, and that you had to face demons and everything else, but just give me an insight into what it's been like for you personally.
Yeah, I think personally, I've had the most growth I've ever had in my life, and that's all due to the Indigenous Marathon Foundation and the Indigenous Marathon Project. Prior to 2021, I was just living a very unhealthy lifestyle. I was having my own issues going on in life. I wasn't very, how would I put it, as strong as I am now. It was just a lot of things in my life were not who I was now as a person. And I think that, one, I was a footy player, so when you think of running, you think of getting smashed in preseason and doing heaps of little sprints and stuff. So if people were ever to tell me, "Do you want to come for a run this afternoon?" I'm like, "No way, absolutely not." So I think I owe it all to another good mate of ours called Neil Sabatino. He actually, at one of my lowest points in life, he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, bro, do you want to go for a run on the Strand tonight?" And I was like, "No, not really," but in my head, I was like, you know what? If I go for a run the Strand, I know I could probably beat Neil in a run, but I'd feel good about myself. And as we went on the Strand, what happened was he just took off and he blitzed me. But I had a little moment then where on the Strand where I was running, I look to my left, there's the beautiful magnetic island, the beautiful beach. The sea breeze is hitting me in my face, and I was like, you know what? Running's not that bad. And from there, he said, why don't you try for the Indigenous Marathon Project? And then I did, and from there, the rest is history. So throughout the Indigenous Marathon Project, you get placed with 12 other members from around Australia, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island men and women, some amazing people in my squad. We had doctors, we had teachers, we had people working in government, we had advocates, we had some just amazing people. We had a young fellow from Arakoon, which has its own community issues as well. But you had a young fellow from there to be able to take on the world, and he ran Athens as well, and do what he did was amazing. So I had a lot of people that would uplift me and inspire me, and really show me to who the true person I am today, and gave me the strength to. So the biggest thing in IMP and IMF, which you would have seen, Chrissy, is that there's no shame and it's completely okay to be vulnerable. So a lot of how I was last year and has flown on to the person I am now was being vulnerable with what I was going through, and being sharing a lot of what I had on my plate, but being accepted for that, and then pushing through and finding the true strength in who I am as a person, and also finding strength in my voice to advocate for things such as community issues around youth, issues in Townsville, and especially mental health issues for young people and everyone in general. So,
that's really interesting. Do you think part of your reason for not feeling good at that stage of your life was because you were far from home and feeling disconnected to who you truly were?
Yeah, I reckon that was a huge part of it. And I was like, oh geez, I can't even remember who that person was, if I'll be honest. Like I was very disconnected in a lot of things. I just probably wasn't accepting of what was going on. My biggest trait I used to do, and probably a lot of young people do, especially young males, is that they try to suppress whatever bad's going on in their life, and they just put it all in a little bubble, and they try to suppress it down, or they say, nah, I'm okay, or I'm fine, all those types of things. So I had a lot of mental health issues going on within myself. I had a lot of just other issues like housing and all that type of stuff going on in my life, relationship issues. So once I really got back to the core of who I was, and I found out, I tried to heal myself, and make sure that my cup was full, and spiritually I was going okay. Then came the mental aspect where I was going okay mentally. Then became myself getting into physically good shape for running a marathon. So a lot of things came from running the marathon and being a part of IMP in 2021. People always just say, "Oh, mate, you're in a marathon." I'm like, "Yeah, but there was so much more than
Yeah, that's really awesome.
It's more than a running program for sure."
And you kind of you're a teacher as well. Obviously, you're working in all boys schools, so you're exposed to that boys' mental health challenges, I guess, on a daily basis. Do you feel a lot of external pressure to be a positive role model?
I do in a way, but I also am very proud that the boys see me as a role model. Like I don't really see myself as a role model, but I'm glad that they do, because I went to that school as well, Ignatius Park College, and growing up, and going through that the school, there was not too many young male Indigenous role models who I looked up to. So I remember there was like not a lot of people that I would look up to, especially young Indigenous males. So now that I'm worked there, I just try to instill in them what I didn't have. So, students always just want to hang out with me, which I think is pretty cool, or they'll, just want to come and talk about life. So yeah, I teach there, and that's my job. Just the relationships I have with those young men, and I'll be able to, help influence their lives. So when they leave school, not only are they, leaving school for an education, but, they're leaving school with great morals. They're good young men. They're proud of their culture. They're healthy within themselves and healthy within their community. And that's probably the biggest thing. I like to think of it as that there's, whenever there's a year that graduates, so there's 18 year 12s that graduate this year, there's going to be 18 little new Tristans running around in the community.
Wow, so that's beautiful.
They can, just do some good things.
And it's so important to have the opportunity to lift others up, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just important just to be able to inspire others, because that's the biggest thing about IMP as well, and the biggest thing about the Indigenous Marathon Foundation is you never know who's truly watching. So you just go about your business, you just go about your everyday job, just be who you are and true to yourself. And you could get a text out of nowhere saying, "Hey, look, really inspired with what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing." And those things mean a difference because you're just doing yourself and you're just doing what you think is just a normal day thing, but other people are really inspired by that. So that's
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing I've got over the last 2 years is that a lot of people have come on the journey with me, and I've changed a lot of lives which I thought I wouldn't have had.
Yeah, exactly. You've inspired me too. You taught me a lot of great history, Indigenous history, with your lesson on Eddie Mabo in June. I've not actually forgotten that. I think about it almost every day, to be honest. So that was really powerful for me. And also you're a great hugger, by the way. You're one of the best huggers. So when you're a good runner and a good hugger, it's something to be proud of.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's just, I think to be honest, that's come all from growing as a person who I am. It's always never been seen as, real men don't show emotions, but me, I love a hug. I
Yeah,
love telling my friends I love them. I love telling
yeah.
my parents I love them. I love just being happy around a lot of people because that's just who I generally am.
Yeah, you come across as a very friendly person, which is really wonderful. And I'm a hugger too. So you always appreciate that bit of a hug on the start line before you're about to run a race because it can
before
be quite lonely.
we're both about to go through hell.
Exactly. So what does inclusion mean to you personally?
Um, that's a good question. I think inclusion is just means both, well, everyone, just working together towards the same goals. So, Aboriginal, Torres Strait, non-Indigenous people, it's just all about working together towards the same goal and just being inclusive with whatever they're doing. I keep going back to the Marathon Foundation, but you can see that's a great example of it where, it's was set up to help Indigenous people find themselves and excel. But what has happened is a whole lot more. We have a lot of people, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, coming together for a common goal, and that common goal is just to, live a healthier lifestyle. That common
Mm,
goal is just to have people around you that are like-minded, just to have people around you that are on the same journey. So,
mm.
inclusion is for me is definitely everyone working together to be able to achieve the one goal, or everyone working together to just be on the same path. And that's in numerous ways, whether it's running groups, football teams, chess clubs, everything. Everyone should have the equal amount of right to be able to do something and do whatever that is that they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think school is, part of that too. There's so many different ways that inclusion affects our lives. And, I've lived in countries where I've been the minority too. So
Yeah,
when you've been a minority in a non-English speaking country and you're pinched and pushed and prodded and shouted at or whatever happens to you, you very
yeah,
quickly start to understand what inclusion and exclusion feels like. And not everybody gets a sense of that throughout their life, so I do really value that. And I think that one thing that I've got for myself personally out of being part of the Indigenous Marathon Foundation this year broadly is that sense of inclusion for me personally that I was missing, and that sense of connectivity with something bigger than just myself and my local area, because I know that it's happening all over Australia. I know that there are other people trying to do similar things to what I'm doing. And they're also working together to help others. And that's really important.
yes, exactly. I think that's the biggest thing that like we both been like-minded upon is that we both just have the same goals and we have the same values, and that's what inclusion is all about. Just working together with people that are on the same level with you. So
Yeah.
very blessed to meet you this year, Chrissy, and to do everything just with you. It's been pretty deadly.
Thank you, my friend. So I want to ask you about your sense of responsibility to your ancestors, because after you tell that story about Eddie Mabo, and
Yeah,
it's a pretty powerful story the way that you told it, I thought, do you feel for yourself a sense of responsibility going forward?
I think I do, and I think all Indigenous people do. But I feel some people feel it more than others. I have such a big cultural connection to my Torres Strait Islander culture. I'm also Aboriginal from Awuthidi, which is in the eastern part of Cape York and Shelburne Bay. So both of my mobs, Aboriginal and Torres Strait, I have such a connection to, and I feel like it's a responsibility to continue that culture, but not only that, to continue the legacy of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people being very strong minded, strong, hardworking, strong, dedicated people, which they have been for 60,000 years. I try to tell young boys at school, but also within the community of Townsville that, our people, traditionally, our ancestors, they weren't gangsters. They didn't go around doing thug things, but what they were proud warriors. They were hardworking people, and they provided for their family and their communities. So that's what I like to tell them. And it's funny that I tell those things to a lot of young men in the community, and their kind of light bulb mob happens, and they flick a switch because they realize that 60,000 years have happened for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and you're letting it go in one generation. So it's kind of such a big responsibility that I feel, but not so much me. A lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people feel that responsibility to my ancestors. I'm just very blessed that I come from such a great lineage on Murray Island, where Uncle Eddie Kweki Mabo is from. So I feel that strong advocacy pride, but I also just feel like I have because of my strong connection to culture, which a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people unfortunately don't have due to stolen generation. I have that connection to culture, but I feel it's my obligation to share that with as many people as I can. And that one day when I have little kids, I'll pass on that knowledge to them, and hopefully they can pass on to their kids and their kids, so that they keep that lineage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture alive for future generations. So that's the responsibility I feel, but also just being able to share it to like kids at school, to be able to talk language with my family. That's still like passing on culture. That's still celebrating it. To be able to do traditional customs like dance, like singing when all the family get together. Those are the things I really love, which is, I guess, my responsibility to keep those things going.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And is that one of the motivations for you to become a teacher, or what was the impetus behind it?
Pretty much. I remember in Torres Strait growing up. I grew up in the Torres Strait, then moved to Townsville shortly after. But in the Torres Strait, it was in year 6, and at the time, or year 7 actually, and at the time that was the most before you go to high school. But in year 7, I had 4 different teachers that year. Obviously, it's a Torres Strait. Teachers come and go, different living circumstances, but all 4 of them came and went, and just like we had so much instability around our education, but only that, just around most of them were non-Indigenous teachers teaching us, and it was just hard communication barriers, cultural barriers. So I remember very early on in life, I thought I would love to be a teacher, and my end goal was to end up back in the Torres Strait, so little kids don't have to go what I went through, and I can be a real pillar of hope and a pillar of education for a lot of the young kids in Torres Strait. So that's exactly why I wanted to become a teacher. From early on, from grade 7, so 12 years old, I knew I wanted to become a teacher, and that's all I've ever wanted to do, and that's all I've ever known. But also becoming a teacher in the lead up to that, I worked as a teacher aide with Indigenous kids. I worked as a teacher aide with kids with learning differentials and disabilities. So got to learn a whole lot more around that type of aspect, and have a whole lot more respect for families that have young children with disabilities. I got to work in after school care. So, I was out there afterwards looking after little kiddies and raking sand pits and playing puzzles with little kids. And I got to work as a groundsman at some stage. So I was out there mowing the lawns and hedging bushes. So in terms of education, yeah, I'm a teacher now, but I've done so much more that makes me really appreciate every aspect within a whole school. I always say at Iggy Park and with every other school I go through, the most important people in life and the most important people in school are the little people. So the tuck shop ladies, the groundsmen, the office ladies, they're the most important people at school, not the principals and the priests and all that. Just the little people that matter, that make the school operate and what it is. So that's always been my ethos.
That's a great story, mate. You should write a book.
No, English is not my strong point, but I can talk a lot, but I can't Right. So
Just do an audio book. That's easy. And
yeah.
so what is your legacy for youth then? You've kind of described it there, but is there anything else you want to add?
Um, no, just to be able to. My legacy, I guess, is life's starting to take off now. There's starting to have a lot of things happen for me in life. Starting to be a part of a lot of culture groups, and within my family, I'm starting to ascend to that next level of leadership with my father and my uncles, and starting to have input within the family. Starting to do a lot of things within the Townsville community. Starting to, just set up a youth council, and we're working really closely on youth issues within the Townsville. We're actually liaising with a lot of ministers and a lot of high up government people, police commissioners, all that type of stuff. Still teaching all that things. So my legacy is just to, for someone to, if they say, "Oh, do you know Tristan Nelliman-Adams?" and for them just to say, "Yeah, he's a good guy." So that's the only thing I'd ever want anyone to believe of me. So I'm just going to continue to do my thing. I say yes to a lot of things, which is probably a blessing and a curse, but I'll never turn anything down. So, my legacy at the moment and in Townsville is just to be a good person with good values and just be true to myself. And that's what I always have been, and I won't change that. So, what you see is what you get. We'll hop off this Zoom and I'll be exactly the same person. I didn't put it on just for it. Like, I'll see you and I'll still give you a hug as big as I can and all that. So it's just my legacy is just to be a good person in life. That's all it is. And, you can't beat kindness. That's the biggest thing.
That's beautiful. And I totally agree with you because I think people remember what you radiate from within more than what you have on the outside. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And, I've already run 2 marathons. So who knows what the third one.
Congratulations.
So I'm going for a third next year. I don't know where, don't know when, but even though Athens was very painful and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, I'm going out again in 2023 to run an international somewhere in the world. I just don't know where yet. Who knows?
Yeah.
New York, Berlin, Hawaii, Jamaica, Gold
London,
Coast,
London.
London, Townsville.
Well, I'm hoping to do Sydney in September, so you could come with me if you like.
Definitely, I'll come for a trip.
Then maybe London next year. Who knows? We need to find some sponsors for our running adventures.
Yeah, we should. We definitely should.
Thank you so much for joining me. I loved our chat, and I think you're a good person. So thank you for being an amazing person.
No, that's right, Christy. Thanks for having me. And like I said, we're good mates. So I really cherish everything you do for me, for the Townsville Deadly Runners, for the community, for our little 4 deadly, deadly little men and women that call you Mamaja. So you're a pretty amazing lady. And it was an honor for me to be able to come on here. So thank you.
That's
and everyone
wonderful.
else who's listening, make sure you follow all Chrissy's things and keep up to date with what she's doing. She's got a big 2023 happening for her.
Thank you, my friend. All right, have a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you again soon.
All right, thank you. Bye.